everyone, and welcome back to the Cozy Corner. My name is Lee, and this is my library. So grab a mug of something yummy and settle in for some talk of books. Happy November and happy NaNoWriMo to anybody who is participating. Technically, it's the second day of NaNoWriMo. Today was actually my first day because I decided that I was going to take Mondays off from writing this month, just because that's my busiest day of work. And in order to do my best, both at my job and my writing work, I can't do both on the same day. So today was officially my first day of NaNoWriMo, and we did well. We crushed the word count goal, which was great. Hopefully we'll have that continue. But good luck to anybody who is participating, and I hope that you write well. But today we are talking about my November TBR. I have 3 sections to this TBR. The first is the books that I am currently reading. The second is the books that I would like to get to this month. And then the third is the featured reads of November. So without further ado, let me talk to you about what I'm currently reading. So I'm currently in the middle of 2 different books. The first is the final book from October for my spooky season TBR. And that is Death by Cafe Mocha by Alex Erickson. This is a continuation of the Bookstore Cafe murder mystery series. It's a cozy. And this follows the story of Chrissy Hancock, who is one of the proprietors of the Bookstore Cafe. And her best friend Vicky, who runs the bookstore part of the cafe, and a friend from town are going to JavaCon, which is this big coffee competition where there is where there are people who are competing in a flavor blend coffee competition, and the winner of that competition is murdered. And so in the middle of this convention, Chrissy has to figure out who killed this man. There are several love interests. I should say several. There's 2. One is back home in Pine Hills, where her coffee shop is, and the other is a potential murder suspect. So she's wrestling with her emotions on that. I have annually a continuing education conference or convention that takes place in massive hotels, where this one takes place in. So there's ballrooms and conference rooms all rented out, so I can just picture the vibe. I'm fully getting the atmosphere of this book. So anyway, I am halfway through, I think, on chapter 15, and it's pretty good so far. No real inkling as to who did it. I have my suspicions, but I don't like to firmly guess until I'm about 3/4 of the way through, because it's fun to see if I'm right or not. And then the other book that I'm currently in the middle of is The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. I am on chapter 7, part 2, An Empty Plate. It's so good. It's so good. It's beautiful. It's such a unique, interesting story. There's already some suspense elements in it, some mystery. It's so atmospheric. But this follows the story of Daniel. And Daniel, when he is 6 years old, or 11, he's 11 years old, is taken by his dad to the Cemetery of Lost Books. And Daniel is allowed to pick out a book. And so he picks out The Shadow of the Wind by Julian Carras, and he loves it. He falls in love with that book. It changes his life, and he wants to read more by Julian. And the more he tries to find anything written by that author, the more it is elusive and escapes his grasp. And he comes to discover that someone has been going around and burning all of Julian Carras's works for some reason. And it's interesting because the books had very limited runs, they were not successful, and yet someone is bent on destroying them. It's so beautifully written, so easy to read, and yet it's just, oof. I like it a lot. I can't wait to read more of it. So, and it got a shout out from Stephen King, so one of the big dads of suspenseful mystery writing really likes it. So the books that I'm hoping to get to are all on this shelf up here, and they are still continuations from the Around the World in 325 Days reading challenge, the Europe section. I will not finish this challenge by the end of the year. I'm just putting it out there. It was an ambitious goal, and I'm about halfway through, so that's fine with me. All of the books that I didn't get to will be put into my eventual TBR, because I have a new TBR format that's going to be starting in the new year that I'm really excited about. But I still have about 2/3 of those book titles left to finish by the end of the year, and they are War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. I'm just going to read them off to you. The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak, Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert, Zorba the Greek by Nikos Kazantzakis, is the Greek last name, very hard to pronounce, and then White Teeth by Zadie Smith. All of those are hopefully going to get to by November, probably not, but I would like to get to several of them. If you want to know more information about those book summaries, feel free to go and watch my Around the World in 325 Days Europe video. I will link it down in the description or put it into a time card somewhere, or the info button, whatever it is up in the corner. But eventually I would like to get to those. But I want to talk specifically about the featured reads for November. I'm so excited. I have 4 amazing selections that are for nonfiction November, and I'm going to read you the summaries of them. I don't have any of them with me. 2 of them are on audiobook that I'm going to listen to throughout November, and 2 of them are available at my library. So I may check them out from my library, I may listen to them on audiobook. I'm not sure yet, but these are the 4 that I am going to be working on this November. So the first is All Over But the Shoutin by Rick Bragg, and this follows, I think it's a memoir of Bragg's childhood growing up in Alabama during the Civil Rights Movement in Northeast Alabama, and he talks about the class relations, the challenges of growing up as a white teenager, and the lingering effects of his parents and their beliefs, and the story of him becoming eventually a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist for the New York Times, and chronicles his story of the journalism classes that changed his life and his thoughts and processes of coming to grips with the history that he comes from. So it sounds really interesting. Last year I started it last year and I finished it in January. Walter Cronkite's autobiography, A Reporter's Life, and he covered this area of history. I kind of have a feeling it's going to be a similar in style to that. That's just a guess, but it sounds really interesting. Great subject to read in today's day and age as we move towards an age of education and we talk about the class theory, race theory, critical race theory, that's what it is, in schools, and we're educating our kids, which I wholeheartedly applaud. So I am looking forward to continuing my education on such subjects. So that's one of the ones. I have them all pulled up on my computer. And then the next book that I am planning to read for nonfiction November is Educated by Tara Westover. Again, another one that I'm really excited about. So this is a memoir by Tara Westover, and she is recounting her childhood as part of a survivalist Mormon family in Idaho, and the fact that she has had no formal education until at 17 she decides to go to college and gets a PhD from Cambridge University, and her struggles with faith and beliefs about life and identity and self-esteem and women's education, all of that wrestling as she comes to grips with her desire to learn while reconciling the world that she had inhabited previously. So it sounds really, really good. Mormonism is not something I'm particularly familiar with. I've heard bits and pieces, and I know people who are Mormon and practice Mormonism and attend the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I am not particularly familiar with the extremist parts of that group, so it will be interesting to learn more about that. The next book that I'm reading is probably the one that I am the most excited for. It's also the longest audiobook, it's like 14 hours long, but it is Red Notice, A True Story of High Finance, Murder, and One Man's Fight for Justice by Bill Browder. This is the real-life political thriller of Bill Browder, who is an American financier in Russia. And it chronicles his story of beginning in the south side of Chicago as he went through Stanford Business School, and he becomes a broker for one of the biggest finance companies in Eastern Russia. And while he is working there, his tax attorney is killed, and he becomes aware that oligarchs are stealing from the companies that he is helping finance. And when he begins to expose the underbelly of the crimes that are being committed and the corruption in the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin has him expelled from Russia. I don't think he was arrested, but his tax attorney, whose name is Sergei, was arrested and murdered in prison. And so Bill Browder embarks on a quest to avenge Sergei and expose all of the corruption. So it sounds really good. I have seen, unfortunately, mixed reviews, mostly about Bill Browder's character himself, but I'm trying to ignore them because I would like to draw my own conclusions. But the premise sounds incredible, and I'll have to look up and see whether anyone's actually like made this into a film adaptation or whether other works have been based on this story, because it sounds so good. This takes place in the 90s and early 2000s, so relatively recently, before we knew Vladimir Putin in the context that we know him now. But anyway, it sounds so good. I'm a little bit obsessed with politics in Russia. I think it's fascinating, so I'm excited to learn more about this particular moment in history. And then the fourth and final book that I'm hoping to read for Nonfiction November is The Girl Who Smiled Beads by Clementine, Wamariya, and Elizabeth Weil. This one is a sad one, also in the 90s, but it chronicles the story of Clementine and her sister, who I think is 15 at the time, Clara, as they flee the Rwandan massacre and genocide that happens in that year, and she spends the next 6 years migrating through various African countries looking for safety, and they encounter things like starvation, imprisonment, abuse, kept in refugee camps, finding unexpected kindness and insane human cruelty. It just sounds like an awful an awful story, but also a very impactful one of human survival and finding kindness in the darkest situations. So it sounds really interesting. It is a part of history that I am not familiar with, and I look forward to learning more about the incredible resilience of countries that are suffering such awful things. So it sounds really interesting and deeply moving. So those are the books that I am planning to read for Nonfiction November. I got these from a list that I think I saved on my Pinterest page, which I will link in the description. It'll be linked down below for my Pinterest page for all of my bookshelf stuff. So I'm really excited. I don't read a whole lot of nonfiction, so I am looking forward to the opportunity to sink my teeth into some good ones. So that's the plan. A shorter TBR video for once. Like I said, I don't really have any firm plans as to what's coming next for my Europe books. I use a random wheel generator to pick which one is coming next, so you'll have to watch my vlogs to see which one I pick up after Shadow of the Wind. But my main focus is the nonfiction, so I am reading the rest of them at my leisure. Anyway, please let me know what you're reading for November. Are you participating in Nonfiction November? If so, what subjects or authors are you reading? I would love to know. Have you read any of the nonfiction books that I am reading? Because I would love to talk about them. Or if you know of any good adaptations that have been made out of those books that I can watch after I'm done, I would love that. So yeah, let me know what you're reading in November. And if you liked this video, go ahead and give this video a like and subscribe to my channel, because it really does help me out, and let me know what you guys want to see. And as always, a huge thank you to the friends and family who have readily supported me on this journey. It truly means the world to me, and I can't wait to see what's on the next page. Cheers.